Hello and welcome, folks. This is Zach from Theology Gaming, and I want to highlight a deck I've been having way too much fun playing. So let's take a look. Okay, so I don't really love rogue decks, and I'm not sure why that is. I think it's because rogues are a strange class to play. I mean, if you just take a cursory look at their cards, it's got a lot of stuff that costs 0 or has low cost, and their hero power allows them to equip a weapon, which is strange, to say the least. So a lot of Rogue's power comes from both its ability to remove stuff off the board and its ability to output huge amounts of burst damage. And of course, as per usual, people took great advantage of these things, which led to the creation of the quote-unquote Miracle Rogue deck. So Miracle Rogue is based on the idea that Rogue has tons and tons of cheap cost cards. So you got Backstab, which costs 0, you have Prep, which costs 0, you have Shadow Step, costs 0, Cold Blood costs 1, Sinister Strike costs 1, Deadly Poison costs 1. That's a lot of cards that cost 1. And basically, how do you take advantage of this? You use this card. Gadgetzan Auctioneer is basically why Miracle Rogue could ever be created in the first place. Whenever you cast a spell, draw a card, which is hilarious, because Blizzard clearly didn't know that if you have a card that you use to draw the cards, and you have a class that has a lot of things that don't cost anything, then in the end, you're going to have a card that causes everybody to go bananas. So Gadgetzan Auctioneer was nerfed. It used to be 5 mana, which is why it was so powerful. Now it's 6 and has dropped out of the meta. But anyway, there are viable Miracle Rogue decks. It just takes a lot more strength to basically control the board for most of your turns. And then you have your quote-unquote miracle turn, which lets you kind of draw through your entire deck. So here's one variation, which is possible to play with, but I would call it suboptimal. I've never been able to play Miracle Rogue with any degree of consistency, and I think it's because it kind of relies on Thaurissan to make things work now, instead of just working by itself. This is the post-Blackrock Miracle Rogue version, which uses Malygos as its finisher. There are other things you can do. This is probably one of the better ones, because, what is it? Sinister Strike does 3 damage, does 8 damage for 1 mana. If you can get a cost reduction of all these low-cost cards, you're looking at a huge amount of damage, possibly a one-turn kill, depends. But again, everything else in this deck is just to get to there. And it's an interesting deck, but for me, I've never gotten it to work. The other combo that used to make it super solid was the use of Shadow Step, which return a minion to your hand, it costs 2 less. And Shadow Step's really good, and then you can use this, attack 4 instead, and you could create giant burst damage turns with, I guess, why is that not showing up? Maybe it's because I typed it in wrong. Let's look. Leroy Jenkins, who summons 2/1/1 whelps, but it really doesn't matter if you Shadow Step him twice. Now, he costs 5, he used to cost 4, which is, again, the problem, because you could basically take him back to your hand. He costs 2 less. You play him again, costs 2 less. Then you get a bunch of cards that cost 1. You could do about 24 damage in 1 turn, which is hilarious. So that's why this deck kind of fell out of favor. It's just, it lacks the consistency to work. So basically, Rogue became kind of known for big burst damage out of hand, which is kind of a big thing in Hearthstone. So what happened in its stead was around Goblins versus Gnome time, people were like, oh, what's Rogue going to do? Rogue going to do? And Oil Rogue came into being. Oil Rogue being the deck which uses Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, which doesn't seem that powerful at a first glance. Let's take a closer look here. Give your weapon 3 attack. Okay, that's great, right? And give a random friendly minion plus 3 attack. Now, a lot of people were like, it's not that great for 4 mana. Of course, you don't think of it in the way that you could use it with Preparation, which reduces the cost by 3, thus making your Tinker's Sharpsword Oil 1, plus you always get the combo. If you have any kind of minion on the board, including this, it gets plus 3. If you use a minion with charge, for example, like Celtic Deckhand, it also gets +3. And you already have a weapon equipped, otherwise you wouldn't be using Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, so you kind of charge into them for massive burst damage from your hand. Which all sounds well and good, but in practice it works like incredibly well. I don't know why. There's something about this combination of cards. Basically, Oil Rogue is a tempo deck, which means it just basically plays to control the board and have like huge turn swings. And then you are setting up your big turn of big crazy damage, which is basically like most decks, you just want to control the board. So Oil has a lot of tools to help you get there. Backstab, you want to keep Backstab and then use SI7 Agent if you can get both, which is pretty awesome. That is some tempo on turn 3, let me tell you. Prep is always good. Deadly Poison is always good for removal, but you can also use it in your big combo. Blade Flurry is crazy good in this deck, because once you build up the weapon enough, right, you just use Blade Flurry and you might be able to clear an entire board of like 7 health minions. It's like nuts. Abyss, Sap, these are all tools basically to get you from into the mid game with a big weapon and then smack things in the face. And Thalnos, these are all like staples of rogue decks for time immemorial, apparently in this game, but they just happen to find their way into Oil Rogue because Oil's just the new hotness. There are obviously variations on this deck, but the most of them have these standards, like Thalnos and Earthen Ring Farseer to keep you alive. Anti-Keelbot keeps you alive. Van Cleef is kind of optional. You really don't need him. There's plenty of decks that just kind of use 2 Violet Teachers instead. The Violet Teacher synergy is insane because basically you're casting a ton of low-cost cards again, just like Miracle Rogue. Instead of getting cards, you get 1/1 apprentices who could also benefit from Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, which is scary for your opponent. See, in Oil Rogue, what happens is that you gain the lead, and your opponent knows what you're doing, which is basically you're trying to establish a board to set up a turn where you can kind of wreck their face. And so they will, at any cost, try to remove everything on your board. And that's scary for them. So, we also have Azure Drake, which is kind of standard in Rogue. Piloted Shredder, this is kind of an iffy spot. I think you can pretty much use anything. And Lothab is the big, here's a 5-mana minion, and you can't remove it because all your spells cost too much. And the reason why the deck works is because of Sprint plus Prep. So you can get a 4-mana, 4-card draw, which is pretty crazy. And that's what keeps his deck going and not just kind of dying off. Obviously, a lot of this requires good weapon usage, but that's kind of the basics of the deck. There's probably some other slots here and there you can kind of modify it to your own taste. Now, but I don't like playing normal Oil Rogue, because I think the synergy is good, but there's like no theme to this. It's just like a bunch of stuff. And I know that's impractical, it doesn't make any sense, but I need a little more theming. So, take the Pirate Oil Rogue. I copied this off Icy Veins. Thank you, Icy Veins. I'm sure somebody else created it in advance of them, or they posted it, but I kind of like this variation of the deck a lot. So you have the common Backstab, Prep, Deadly Poison, etc. You have 2 South Sea deckhands for burst damage. You have 2 Blade Flurries as per usual. You have Eviscerate, you have Sap. Now you have Bloodsail Raider, which gets the additional attack of your weapon, which is really good in a weapon-based deck like Oil Rogue, because you might find yourself with a 7/3 Bloodsail Raider, or perhaps even more, depending on how big your weapon is, and it can be scary. Even though these are easily removed, you get value when you have Ship's Cannon out and you drop any of these, including the 1 damage one, right? And you have SI7 Agent, Tinker's Sharpsword. You're going to have a big weapon anyway, so you get a lot of reduced cost on your taunt here. Azure Drake makes his way in here. Captain Greenskin, which I'd underestimated at first, but in Oil Rogue, it's pretty darn crazy. If you got a big weapon, right? Assuming you do. And you put him down, you get an extra durability, which can be enough to close out a game, assuming the game lasts long enough. He's pretty great. Obviously, he dies immediately to stuff like Flame Cannon, among other things, but he's like super stellar in this deck. Much better than you would expect. So, Why this variation works for me is because it's slightly off meta, because people think, oh wow, he's playing an awful pirate rogue deck, right? Everybody has tried to play pirate with mixed success. It's not exactly the best tribe in the world. Whenever you summon a pirate gain stealth, how long is a one health minion gonna live on a board? I mean, costs 2, but the likelihood is that they can use any kind of 1 damage AoE and wreck this thing. Then you got Bloodsteel Corsair, who removes 1 durability from your opponent's weapon. Wow, that's great. Why don't I just play the Ooze for 2? That's a 3/2, which destroys a weapon. See, these are the kind of weird choices that make no sense. Put a random pirate from your deck into your hand for 2 mana for a 1/1. I mean, it's not great. Now, you could put South Sea Captain in here, because in terms of being a rogue deck, this one is more based upon minion dominance and tempo than it is about simply burst damage and kind of just controlling the board. So that's why a lot of the other spells are not in this one, because you're looking to establish board control first with pirates, and the pirates can get value anytime that you have a weapon equipped or you have another pirate on the board, especially if you get the ship's cannon. So, and Salty Dog, he's awful. Yeah, for 5, 7/4s. I mean, the dream obviously would be to slap him with a couple sharp sword oils and just smash opponent's face, but I doubt with that 4 health he's ever going to live that long. He's kind of like Ren Blackhand, but at least he only costs 5. Probably an arena or something. Anyway, Pirate Oil Rogue, pretty awesome. I had a lot of fun playing it anyway. So, if you don't like standard Oil Rogue, you might like this, because it has a little more focus on board control and keeping things in line. And the best part is they mulligan incorrectly because they think they're playing a freaking pirate deck. Which, in a game like Hearthstone that's pretty much based on people like looking up, whoa, what's the big deck of the day? And kind of just implementing it, it can be a pretty big advantage. So, I guess I will play a couple games and we will see how good I am at this. Alright. See you in the next video.